Story 1. I live in Europe and travel to the United States once or twice a year for professional reasons, mainly for conferences. On one such trip to a city which shall remain nameless, I stepped out of the conference during a break to visit the local convenience store for the purpose of securing some cheesy snacks. As I was browsing the astonishingly endless selection of treats, I became aware of a disagreement at the other end of the aisle. I was not paying close attention, so I do not know what caused it, but the participants were a pale and frightened shop assistant who appeared to be a young female presenting adult, likely a college student, and a woman who could have been Louise Jefferson's rather unpleasant twin. Because of her voice, which was raspy and wheezy, I will refer to her as Wheezy, which also suited her demeanor. My subsequent involvement was admittedly self-inflicted, given that I was wearing a business suit, B. wearing the conference identification badge on a lanyard, and C. carrying a clipboard. Wheezy caught sight of me and leapt to the obvious conclusion. She waddled up to me and demanded, "I want her fired. She's useless at her job," and she was rude to me. It required a spectacularly vivid imagination to picture how the timid girl who was on the verge of tears could possibly be rude to anyone, let alone a strong-willed personality like Wheezy. Yet, in the very same instant as I considered this, an idea struck me. I raised my clipboard and began scribbling furiously. Wheezy confused, "What are you doing?" Me putting on my best British accent. "I am sure you agree, madam, that what you are requesting must be carried out with the proper procedure. Just one moment, I do apologize for the delay." Wheezy was still processing this as I tore off the page, walked up to the girl, and handed it to her. I said, "There, now go." She disappeared in an instant, almost like a flash of light. What I had written, in what I hoped was legible handwriting, was, "I do not work here, so I cannot fire you. Go get a manager. This may turn unpleasant." I turned back to Wheezy. Me. "Now then, madam, your name and address, please." Wheezy, "What? Why do you need my name and address?" Me. "Surely you know that if you get someone fired, you are responsible for the cost of hiring and training their replacement." I fixed her with what I hoped was a steely glare. Me, "It's the law." Now, the script in my head ended there, and honestly, I do not know whether my improvisation skills would have been up to the task of handling the scene beyond that point. Fortunately, the very prospect of having to pay for what she had just demanded short-circuited Wheezy's complaint process. She decided instead to leave the store, moving at a speed far greater than her usual waddle would have seemed capable of. It was surprisingly satisfying to watch. I never did see the shop assistant again, nor her manager. She must have felt that she had already seen enough unusual behavior from people for one day. Story 2. After reading a certain post a couple of days ago below about hair pulling, it reminded me of something that happened way back in 1970 when I was in the first grade. First grade was the year I started taking the bus to school, and I had to walk several houses to the bus stop where several kids would meet up and catch the bus to school. On the first day, my mom accompanied me until I got on the bus, waved goodbye as I boarded, and found a seat. As soon as the bus got out of sight, the bus driver stopped the bus and proceeded to walk down the aisle, looking at each new kid with a scowl until he got to me. I had longer than usual hair for a boy just past my ears, wavy down to my collar. I was the perfect target for the bus driver, who proceeded to grab my hair and literally pick me up off the seat by it, then proceeded to hit me on the side of my head with the back of his other very bony knuckles hand, until I screamed, then started crying as it hurt so much. He dumped me back in my seat and told all of the other kids on the bus that this would happen to them if we didn't sit perfectly still and perfectly quiet until we got to school. Needless to say, we all sat that way in absolute terror, because over the course of a month or so the bus driver brutalized several kids that way for even the slightest infraction. Not knowing any better, I never said anything to my mom or dad, thinking this was standard practice with all bus drivers. One day, a new kid that had just moved into the neighborhood got on the bus, and the bus driver grabbed their hair and beat them with the back of his other hand, simply because the kid was new and needed to be taught his lesson about bus rules. In school at lunch several of the kids that rode the same bus together, told him the bus driver's rules and explained the punishment in hopes the new kid wouldn't be any further brutalized by the bus driver. The next day the kid got on the bus and very quickly and quietly took his seat. The bus pulled out from the bus stop and went maybe 100 feet when the siren from a police car right behind the bus started wailing. The bus driver pulled over and the biggest, most massively muscular police officer I've ever seen to this day walked up alongside the bus and stood by the door and looked intently at the front tire of the bus. This police officer could have easily played frisbee with a manhole cover if he wanted to, since he was so big. He then motioned to the bus driver to come out and take a look at the front tire, which the bus driver did. The officer looked at the bus driver and said, "Take a look at that tire and the lower lug nut. There's something wrong with it." The bus driver bent down to take a closer look, and the police officer grabbed the bus driver by the hair, lifted him with one arm completely off the ground, and proceeded to beat the driver with his billy club until the bus driver was screaming. The officer then dropped him in a heap on the ground and then continued hitting the bus driver until he was nearly unconscious and no longer fighting to defend himself. The police officer explained to the bus driver that if he even so much as touched another kid again for any reason, he would come back and do it again, but not stop until the bus driver had suffered severe brain damage. Every kid on the bus to a T cheered afterwards, and the new kid had a beaming smile from ear to ear on his face as he pointed at the police officer and said with great enthusiasm, "That's my dad." The bus driver slowly got up, got back on the bus, and drove us the rest of the way to school bleeding from several places on his body and head, and never said a thing. We never saw that bus driver after that day. He must have quit immediately. This was one of the few great days out of the hell that was my elementary education, and one I'll never forget. Story 3. My father and I operate a small excavation and landscaping business, so it is pretty uncommon for me to be mistaken as anything else. However, there is a campground nearby where it happens so often that it has stopped being funny and has instead become quite annoying. You see, the people in the campground own their sites, and therefore are responsible for any general maintenance or improvements on their property. They often call us to do things such as building stone driveways, setting stone pads for sheds, or just handling general landscaping. Now, the campground itself has employees, including some younger guys who maintain the roadways with small landscaping tractors. I also use a small landscaping tractor in my work, so I do understand the confusion. Most of the time, I remain polite about any misunderstanding. Typically, people just have some question about their power or cable service, and I inform them that I am with a private company and do not work for the campground. A few days ago, I was working there, building a driveway for a lady. As usual, I was wearing my noise-canceling headphones while operating the tractor. They do double duty for both hearing protection and entertainment. I generally work alone, and I do not like being bothered while I am working. At some point, I heard a car horn honk. I turned to look and saw a man hanging out of a truck on the roadway near me, waving his hands and moving his mouth. It was pretty clear from his level of agitation that he had been trying to get my attention for a while. I removed my headphones, shut the tractor off, and said, "Hey, what's going on, man?" He replied with something along the lines of, "It's pretty hard to talk to you when you're wearing those headphones." I gave him a friendly smile and responded, "That's the idea," jokingly. It was clear from the look on his face that he did not find this joke funny at all. "Well, I have a question to ask you," he huffed. I gave him a blank, unaffected stare and said, "Okay." He then launched into a complaint about how the water was not turned on at his lot, and how he needed to cook and take a shower, going on and on about why the water was not running. At this point, I assumed he thought I worked there, but since he had quite an attitude, I was in no mood to make this easy for him. "Oh," I said calmly, and stared at him. He fumed silently for a few seconds before asking impatiently, "Well?" I shrugged at him and replied, "Well, what?" He threw his hands up in frustration and shouted, How do I get my water turned on? I gave him a confused look and said, I have no clue, buddy. Well, can you find someone who does? He demanded. Nope, I said flatly, taking a swig from my water bottle while keeping a bored expression. He looked around with an expression that almost seemed to say, Is anyone else seeing this? Then he snapped, I'm going to go find your boss. I smirked and replied, Good luck with that, before putting my headphones back on as he fumed and drove away. I am not sure if he ever found the campground owner or managed to get his water turned on, but I never saw him again. Bonus feel-good story. This happened a few years ago in the same campground. I was working when a sweet little elderly lady walked over to the campsite where I was, and she very politely said, Excuse me, sir? I stopped what I was doing and replied, Yes, ma'am. Can I help you? She gestured toward her own campsite a short distance away. It had a small trailer on it, and she pointed to a large tree branch that had fallen on the roof. A branch fell on my roof, and I cannot get it down. Could you help me? I have a ladder, she asked kindly. I smiled at her and said, Absolutely, I can. I then proceeded to climb up and toss the branch down. When I was finished, she said warmly, Oh, thank you so much. I will be sure to tell Lane, the campground owner, what a nice guy you are. I chuckled a little and replied, Well, I don't actually work for Lane. Her face turned incredibly embarrassed, and she began apologizing profusely. I quickly reassured her that it was perfectly fine and that I was happy to help. She then went inside, brought out a soda, and insisted I take it as thanks. I accepted it with gratitude. It felt good to do a small kindness that day. Moral of the story. If you ask nicely, you will almost always receive help. But if you make assumptions and approach with anger, I will simply toy with you for my own amusement. Story 4. I've been working as a Transportation Security Administration officer at a major regional airport for 9 years now. In that time, I've seen just about everything: people trying to bring prohibited items through security, travelers who don't understand liquid restrictions, and passengers who get frustrated with wait times. Most people are just stressed about flying or unfamiliar with security procedures, so patience and clear communication usually solve any problems. Our checkpoint handles about 15,000 passengers per day during peak travel season. We pride ourselves on being thorough but efficient, keeping wait times reasonable while maintaining the highest security standards. I've worked my way up to lead officer on my shift, which means I handle the more complex situations and help train newer employees. Last Monday morning was particularly busy. It was the start of spring break season, so we had families with lots of luggage, college students heading to vacation destinations, and business travelers trying to make early flights. The checkpoint was moving smoothly despite the heavy volume. That all changed around 9:30 when a woman approached my station with 4 large suitcases, 3 carry-on bags, and what looked like a designer purse collection. She was dressed expensively and had this attitude like she owned the place. Me, good morning, ma'am. I'll need you to place your bags in the bins for screening. Customer, excuse me, but I don't think you understand who I am. Me, ma'am. All passengers go through the same security screening process regardless of who they are. Customer, I fly first class exclusively. I should get red carpet treatment, not this common person screening. She gestured dismissively at the other passengers in line behind her. Me, our security procedures are the same for all passengers. Please place your items in the bins so we can get you processed quickly. Customer, this is unacceptable. I demand a red carpet inspection immediately. Me, ma'am, there's no such thing as a red carpet inspection. Everyone follows the same security protocols. That's when she completely lost it. She started grabbing her luggage and throwing it on the floor around the security checkpoint. Customer, fine. If you won't give me proper treatment, I'll make this easy for you. She was dumping clothes, shoes, toiletries, and electronics all over the floor. Other passengers were backing away and staring. Me, ma'am, You need to stop and collect your belongings immediately. Customer: No, you people owe me a red carpet inspection. I've been flying for 30 years. She kept pulling things out of her suitcases and scattering them around. Customer: I spend more money on flights in 1 year than you make in salary. I deserve special treatment. My supervisor came over to help with the situation. Supervisor: Ma'am, what seems to be the problem here? Customer: Your employee is discriminating against me. I demand to be treated like the premium passenger I am. Supervisor: All passengers receive the same professional security screening. Can you please collect your belongings so we can help you through the process? Customer: I want a red carpet inspection. Roll out a red carpet right now and give me the VIP treatment I deserve. She was still throwing items from her luggage onto the floor. By now, she had created a huge mess and was blocking other passengers from getting through security. Ma'am, if you don't collect your belongings and follow standard procedures, I'll have to call airport police. Customer: Call whoever you want. I'm not moving until someone gives me the respect I deserve. She sat down right in the middle of all her scattered belongings, crossing her arms like a child having a tantrum. Customer: I'm a Diamond Elite frequent flyer. I have rights that you people don't understand. Other passengers were getting frustrated because the line was backing up. Some were taking pictures and videos of the scene. Passenger in line: Lady, just put your stuff in the bins like everyone else. Customer: Mind your own business. You probably fly economy. My supervisor called airport police while I tried to keep the other security lanes moving. The woman continued sitting in her pile of belongings, demanding red carpet treatment. When the airport police arrived, she was still ranting about her frequent flyer status and demanding special treatment. Police officer: Ma'am, you're disrupting airport operations. You need to collect your belongings and either go through security properly or leave the airport. Customer: I'm not going anywhere until someone acknowledges that I deserve better treatment than these common people. Police officer: There is no red carpet inspection. Everyone follows the same security procedures. You have two choices: comply with standard screening or be arrested for disrupting airport operations. Customer: This is discrimination against premium passengers. After another 10 minutes of arguing, she was arrested for disorderly conduct and disrupting airport operations. Airport maintenance had to help collect all her scattered belongings, which filled 6 large bins. The best part came later when my supervisor told me that the woman's airline had been contacted. Turns out, she wasn't actually a frequent flyer at all. She had purchased her first-class ticket just for this trip and thought it entitled her to special treatment everywhere in the airport. Her flight departed without her, and she was banned from the airport for 6 months. Security footage of the incident was used in our training materials as an example of how to handle disruptive passengers professionally. The checkpoint returned to normal operations within 20 minutes, and the rest of my shift was thankfully uneventful. Sometimes the most entitled passengers are the ones with the least actual travel experience. Story 5. Over 20 years ago, my life and plans that I had to stay in my hometown were drastically uprooted and found myself moved to another city. Pounding the pavement almost every day looking for work wasn't getting me any results, and would from time to time find myself relaxing at a cheap diner and reading a complimentary newspaper. And there it was, a job opening for an assistant manager for an expanding, well-entrenched fast food franchise in town. So I called and basically set up my own interview. One of many more omens I seemed to have missed, and ta-da, got the job. About 4 or so months in, I started seeing clues that I should have picked up on, that this operation had some serious issues. That started when they had a custom-built location created in the city's more desirable West End closer to the university, and they made so many mistakes causing needless delays. To top it off, the restaurant district manager was driving the small Bobcat front loader, while teenage new hires who have never experienced physical labor were laying grass sod on the sidewalk. Not hiring a capable crew for the work required was the least of the concerns that I managed to miss, overlook, or otherwise dismiss. Also note that the owner and his head office was based a 4-hour-plus drive north, and for all intents and purposes was an absentee to his own operation. For a 2-year period, I personally witnessed the following. The general manager, my boss, smoking in the office and food prep area even after being told repeatedly to stop. Harassing phone calls to people from the owner's assistant when the health department visited the above location and cited the blatant health violations. Deep fryer catching fire and disciplining terminating employees for calling the fire department. The above-mentioned owner's assistant in Sudbury writing up employees with disciplinary action for breaking non-existent company policy and making it visible to everyone before that person even saw it for a non-existent policy, and then dismissing their actions as an oopsie, even though this was yet another blatant law, privacy laws, violated by them. Disciplinary action against hourly wage employees that don't attend unpaid meetings on their days off. This is also a blatant violation of our provincial law that I should have looked up. Internet access wasn't something I had then, as we all do now. That's just stuff off the top of my head that I personally experienced. Edited to add, at least 2 upper-level managers were fired after stealing substantial amounts of cash, at least one of whom was vocal in his dismissal of my concerns of how bad things were. He was finally fired after he came in after hours and submitted multiple fraudulent refunds on the new debit machine. And there's more, so much more. I kept doing my best and upper management still complained and told me I have all the tools I need to do things better. On the same day, the deep fryer caught fire again. I want to call what they did gaslighting for how inadequate I was made to feel, when also they kept ignoring my pleas for them to do things right, including hire competent maintenance services. Despite my best efforts, pleas, and other attempts at pointing out serious problems with equipment and logistics, it was on deaf ears. Another omen that I missed was that the locations in the owner's town and base of operations got shut down. But hey, he was a professor of business at the local university. More on that later. The day came when I was served a paper saying I was the squeaky wheel, and I got greased. The wagon was rolling on without me. Initially it sucked. A day off to myself, and I started feeling better, and chatting with friends had them saying I should have said something earlier when I told them of the terrible things people experience there. A week later I was working a better job with better people I kept in touch with. In a few months I'd leave that industry and that city behind, as family needed my help at their home. I would also take solace in realizing it seemed I was the only manager that left who wasn't dealing drugs, stealing, or carrying on other questionable acts. Life went on and got much better, even getting licensed in a trade that includes investigating employment violations, using my skills to prevent others having to experience what I endured and/or seek appropriate remedy has been very fulfilling. Some years pass, and it's Halloween 2007. I find myself back for a friend's party in the city where those terrible franchises are run. Or, as I was to abruptly find out, were run. Prized mall location, closed. West End location, abandoned. Original place I started, closed with pending construction nearby. Signs posted in windows are for a multinational holding company. Mall staff say the location there is under renovations. I call nonsense. The owner was adamant about running 24-hour operations and wouldn't close down like this, and all of his franchise locations are shut down. After some discreet inquiries and getting as far as I'm willing at the time, I reach out to the local newspaper with what I found and the contradictory information been thrown about from various sources. A few weeks later, around mid-November, it's front-page news about how the corporation seized all the assets and locations of the franchise owner in August 2007. The reason? Many of the same problems I warned the franchise owner and his admin about. Assets seized totaled well over $10 million. To highlight even more of the shadiness of the owner and his operation, when legal notices were served, the owner told frightened workers it's a mistake and to ignore it and keep working. And then shortly later, about 200 people were out of work and wondering about getting paid at it. This information comes from reported court documents. I sat back and laughed a bit. I felt horrible for the workers, but I was also told they were compensated by the corporate as part of the proceedings. Later on, I would go on to speak with another worker who told me that prior to the franchise getting shut down, the very same assistant of the owner who harassed and yelled and snapped at me and other employees broke even more laws. This so-called operations manager at head office was recorded threatening the worker and telling her to return to work when she was off on workers' compensation. For those unaware up here, that's a serious offense and pretty much on brand for how they ran their now terminated business. I'll admit to making an honest error or two while working for that franchise. But holy hell, I'd never conjure committing blatant wrongs and unlawful acts like they did on the regular, and with what they probably thought they could get away doing with impunity. It's safe to say that a pattern of dishonesty, abuse, and incompetence can have a high price tag, as it did here. Oh, remember how I mentioned the owner was a professor of business at his local university? That one got shut down a month or so ago due to financial insolvency. Karma or irony, I can't tell, but given the track record of the franchise owner, it seems like it was destiny. 5 years ago, a buddy I kept in touch with showed me the owner's LinkedIn account. Instead of accepting responsibility for his involvement with the franchise time period cited in a news article, he fraudulently claimed to be involved in government consulting instead. The account got suspended. Petty, maybe. Providing some well-needed accuracy to LinkedIn? Definitely. Story 6. Well, here goes my story. Happened 5 days ago, but just for context, you all are going to need a bit of backstory. My mother is a woman and, obligatorily, a parent who thinks she is entitled to do what she wants to her children. Which means that my little brother and I were psychologically, emotionally, and sometimes physically abused as little kiddos. I was held in her house all day with her, and I wasn't allowed to go anywhere except school, so I couldn't escape. Which means I haven't experienced the real world until recently. The abuse lasted for about 13 years, until I finally found the courage to put my foot down and verbally hold my ground against my mom and protect my small bean of a brother. I also started to educate him the proper way, like how to set boundaries and not take nonsense from people who overstep them bonus points. Mother wasn't pleased. For a couple of months, everything was going as smoothly as it could. And then the old coronavirus hit, and we were told to stay locked together. And oh dear, mother took advantage of us being within her arms reach to start a whole new sequel of her nonsense. In the span of a few months with her, I reached my limits and called Child Protective Services, and for some obscure reason, she got the news. Now, let's make a proper introduction of the entitled parent of the day. Entitled mother, the self-proclaimed good mother, my birther, me, and the small bean who is my little brother. But the story will mainly be focused around me and my entitled mother. Now, let the party start. I had just been released from the hospital. I was there for a whole other story, and I called Child Protective Services while in the comfort of my not-so-good-looking hospital bed. I'm at the front door of my mom's house, ready to get my punishment. I opened the door, and there I found my mom, drunk on her sofa, hellfire in her eyes. I swear I could feel the heat from the doorway. She gets up and walks over to me with all the dignity she had left and spits out. Entitled mother, I am so mad at you right now. Now, I didn't like the tone she was using, so I guess I didn't think too much before responding. And so am I now. Say what you want to my face before I turn my back on you. Please note that while I was mad in this conversation, I tried my best to be civil and act like a decent human being. I didn't want to say anything that might end up in a physical fight. She wouldn't win, but I don't want to beat up some old small lady because, nope, unlike my entitled mother, I have values. At that point, she was getting more and more agitated, spouting some incoherent phrases I still don't understand to this day. She just stormed off to the room to pour herself another glass while screaming. We can't even beat our kids these days, and now my own child is telling everyone I'm a bad mother. Is that what you want now? To ruin my life? She kept incoherently stuttering. Ah yes, the typical, oh I am a bad mother line, you know, the sentence they use to guilt-trip their kids into feeling bad for her. That's the one. Yup, it doesn't work on me anymore. Me. You ruined my childhood and hurt my little brother. We'll be even. She then proceeded to slam a fist against the table next to me. Her. What did I do to you? Huh? Say it. Me. Okay, let's start with. Oh, don't you dare talk back to me. I am your mother, and I am telling you that you're lying. I interrupt her. Oh, does that make you angry? That I have a voice and a conscious mind? I know you stopped loving your children when they started to speak their mind. No, it's because you are my kids and I get to do what I want with you. I fed and put a roof over your heads. Isn't that enough? She suddenly changed the subject, as if it actually became clear to her that she was running out of arguments. So what did you say to Child Protective Services? I want to know now what lies you fed them, you ungrateful child. Her face turned even redder when I decided not to respond to her question immediately. She knows what she did to us, so there's no secret. Note that I was also making a smug smile while maintaining the silence, just to rile her up a bit more. And now, ladies, gentlemen, and all genders included, this is where things really hit the fan. Me. Well, first I told them about your alcoholism. That was enough to attract their attention to you. I took a picture of your empty bottles of alcohol as proof. I have also recordings of you insulting and menacing my little brother recently. I also told them all about the abuse you had us go through when we were little kids. You're merely getting what you deserve. Her. Oh, so now I'm not allowed to educate my children? How dare you record me without my consent? I knew I should have hit you harder like back in my days so you wouldn't become a rebel. I'm not going to lie, what she just said really hurt me right in the feelings, but I didn't back down. I couldn't for the sake of my sanity and because I wanted to show her who I am. A bit of revenge never hurts, right? Yeah, sure. You know what? Let's see what Child Protective Services thinks of this. She interrupts me. I did not do anything to you. You're just an oversensitive, spoiled brat. You tell lies to everyone to make me feel bad. Insert blurred speech here because I don't speak Karen nor drunk. I decided to quickly cut her off to make a point, the final one. I have now enough proof to make everything stop, to make the pain she inflicts on us end. I'm going to make this clear. We're done. I am done. I'm currently recording all of your talking. Karma is finally coming for you. We're done, I said, loud and clear, before showing her the red button on my screen so she could see the proof of how bad of a complete maniac human being she is. She dropped her glass on the table, stared at me in utter disbelief as I held my phone up, the red button still pulsing to indicate it was still recording. 10 seconds passed while her brain restarted, and she then immediately burst the front door open and stormed out. I saw my little brother open his bedroom door a couple of minutes after all of this nonsense. He was crying. He all but ran up to me to ask, "Are you okay? Did she hurt you? Are we getting help? Where did she go? She's going to get hurt outside." I don't know why my little brother was so adamant about knowing our mom's whereabouts and general safety. I think he just has a golden heart. I wanted to cry with him at this very moment, but I needed to stay strong for him. Just don't worry about her. She'll come back, unfortunately. Let's make dinner for ourselves. Do you want pasta? And this is where my story ends, making pasta for my little brother and me. P.S. I made pasta because it's my little brother's favorite meal, and my entitled mother just hates it. So we never get to actually enjoy some good pasta together.